more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Alongside Dave Minuk, alongside Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours to talk about the Winnipeg Jets, look back at last night's defeat at the hands of the Columbus Blue Jackets. We'll get you set for the visit by the Anaheim Ducks tomorrow, and of course the headliner in this week's homestand, I would say, Tuesday night, the return of Paul Maurice and his new team, the Florida Panthers, to downtown Winnipeg for the first time since he wasn't dismissed, since he voluntarily resigned, or whatever wording we want to use to describe his departure as the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets. I say good morning to both of you gentlemen. It's nice to see you. I'm aware my video and my audio might not be perfectly synced up, working through some technical difficulties. I hope you guys will handle and carry the load while I obviously am struggling to match your solid internet connections. Ezra, good to see you. Nice to see you sporting a Sea Bears t-shirt already.
Yeah, it's actually not a Sea Bears t-shirt. It's a Brock Corden Bears school shirt, if you know that school in River Heights. It's very close to where I live. So yeah, I do like that Sea Bears though logo. I'd like to pick up a t-shirt or a hat or something like that. But yeah, you mentioned Paul Maurice, Drew. I guess we could also use the politically correct mutually parted ways if you want to, use that. We're not going to revisit that because, at the time it looked like, that was it was pretty two-sided in terms of Maurice leaving at that point. But you're right. I think, it's going to be, nice to see the ovation that he gets at Canada Life Center. Patrick Laine, not so much. He wasn't getting an ovation. I was sitting in the crowd, and when Laine scored, there were quite a few boos, which is to be understood. I mean, Jets fans want the Jets to win. I still think Laine is beloved in the city, but he wasn't getting quite the reception that you necessarily thought he was going to get. But that's probably also because of the way the Jets were playing, I would argue. But yeah, guys, I think you probably talked about this game more than you wanted to on last night's post-game show. But I mean, this was a squandered opportunity, and luckily you get the worst team in the league coming in tomorrow in the Anaheim Ducks, right? So you have to think that the Jets are going to bounce back in a big way. But I think I speak for most people when I say that was not the result I was expecting with the Blue Jackets coming into town. You thought the Jets were going to keep their winning ways going after that huge win over Colorado. So even though you've got the Ducks coming up, I mean, you don't want to have another loss because they've already lost to one really bad team. But I think I'm not too worried. I do think it's just one game. You look at the way they bounce back after the loss to the Wild. But yeah, last night you could only call that game a stinker. That's what it was.
Yeah, the stinker would be the right word for that, Dave. We did talk about it on last night's post-game show. Columbus, when they get some of their top talent back, and look, their top talent was far better than the Winnipeg Jets' top talent in last night's game. There's no comparison. Laine, Gaudreau, and Boone Jenner outplayed the Jets' best players by a sizable margin. When Dave and I talked about it on last night, the Jets, from my perspective, they just were slow from the start. Everything was a little bit softer than it needs to be. And I don't care who you're playing in the NHL. If you're going to be soft on the puck and passes aren't going to be crisp, and if your passing isn't going to be on point, you're going to struggle. And, the Jets did struggle for a large portion of the game. And by the time they sort of got their game underneath them, it was sort of already out of hand. It was already, 3-0 when the Jets really started, in my estimation, taking it to Columbus. Well, 3-0 is a pretty significant uphill climb to try and tackle. Not everybody's the Carolina Hurricanes with 5 minutes to go, and the Jets just, they got the result they deserved from last night. We heard Rick Bowness's comments, or you saw his comments, and if you haven't seen them or heard them, they're on illegalcurve.com. You can check it out there in the last night's post-game report. But, it was just clear that the Winnipeg Jets were not, for whatever reason, they were just not ready to go last night. They didn't bring the quality of play that we had seen from them so often so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. And I think that when it was 3-0 and, Columbus, I mean, they essentially stopped playing. They really weren't pouring it on. They weren't, they were essentially, in my estimation, protecting a lead more than they were anything else. And I think there's a lot of, people trying to explain what happened. How do you defeat the defending Stanley Cup champions rather handily 5-0 a few nights prior, and then you lose that way to Columbus? Now, obviously, Patrick Laine was ready to go. He was excited to play his old team for just the second time in Winnipeg. And so you can see there's a little bit of juice there. Obviously, Jack Roslovic feeling the same. Maybe Pascal Vincent drew up some extra plays. So, he's excited to go against his former organization. But I really do wonder if, it like we talked about on the postgame show, it's one of those things you chalk up and you say, okay, those games happen. And it was collectively, right? Like, there was like we talked about, there was one good shift in that second period, that they wore them down and they, attempted. And look, you got to give Korpisalo credit. He made some very good saves when he was called upon. So you have a goaltender who's making some good saves, some timely saves for his club, or getting the assist of the post, on that Morgan Barron chance, or like I said, the big dogs for the Jets. Look, the power play is not good right now. The power play is slow. It's kind of predictable. Mm-hmm. And again, they're trying things that are just improbable. I mean, when I'm watching Kyle Connor, choose to try and get a pass, and Blake Wheeler too, trying to pass through 7 guys to get the puck to the other side of the ice. It's just like, what are you guys doing? Like, get that puck to the point, get a shot on net, get a greasy goal. Not every goal has to be a highlight reel goal. And right now, your power play, what are they? The 18th ranked power play in the NHL or whatever it is, something along that lines. And it's not very good. It's predictable. It's slow. And I think that's a big reason why they're not able to get back into hockey games. I mean, the PK was good. And so it's kind of unfortunate for a Jets club that needed to build on something yesterday. They couldn't find that something until it was too late. I mean, really, all that Pierre-Luc Dubois goal did was break the shutout. You're not like, oh, well, here they go, they're going to do something. No, at that point,
there's only 6 minutes left. What was it, 6 or 7 minutes left? I think what Drew said earlier, Dave, really resonated with me, right? Like, they just were not fresh. They weren't anywhere close to the team that beat the Avalanche. I'll say that much.
No.
And, they were trying to do too much individually, I thought. Like, there just wasn't a lot of cohesiveness. And that's why, Rick Bowness touched on it. I mean, he didn't mince words, guys. Like he said, the reason why I put the fourth line out there on the power play is because they were not producing. And I think the power play is an issue. You're right, Dave. Like, there's way too much, whether or not Ehlers is out of the lineup, there's still way too much talent out there. And we've seen, the power play perform this year. Like, the Jets have scored multiple goals on the power play in a game recently. So the Jets, I forget which game that was. If it was against Chicago, I'd have to go back and look. But, that was just an unacceptable effort. And you're right. You do have to factor in Laine's been out of the lineup for 3 weeks or whatever, and he's pumped up to be in Winnipeg. You knew that he was, he had a little bit of that extra, jump in his step, right? So, nice for him to score 2 goals, in the rink that he used to play in. But it just, I don't know if you guys touched on this. I don't know why David Riddick got the start. Like, Connor Hellebuyck's coming off of a shutout against the Colorado Avalanche. Riddick, what was the last game that Riddick played? Was it against Chicago? I forget. He played a week ago or a week and a half ago. So it's not like Riddick hasn't played in 3 weeks, right? What was the game Riddick played? Sorry, guys. I'm
trying to remember back now which one it was. Was it you're asking me difficult questions. I'll look it up, Ezzy, but you're asking difficult questions.
Riddick played a week ago. So sorry, I'm drawing a blank here, guys, but I thought it was a
played against Carolina.
Didn't he play Carolina? Yeah, that game.
Carolina.
Yeah, so that wasn't that long ago, right? So I just thought it was the wrong decision because Hellebuyck, I think you reward Hellebuyck for playing really well against the Avalanche. And Riddick, I'm not saying Riddick was poor or anything like that. I don't think he was great either. I just was surprised that Hellebuyck didn't get the start coming off of the shutout. Like, to me, you run your hot goalie, That's kind of the way I look at it.
I don't disagree with your point there. I mean, I think in a very, very small sample size, Riddick had some good numbers against the Blue Jackets. But to your point, first of all, the Jets haven't played in 3 days or however many days off it had been. They had a big chunk of time off, so it's not like Hellebuck was had been overworked. Yeah. And the back-to-back isn't until the end of next week. So it was a little curious that Riddick got the start in last night's game. Because we're not used to seeing Connor Hellebuck get a night off largely unless it's a back-to-back situation. That's just sort of how it's been. So I understand not wanting to, drive him into the ground, but, at the same time, and I think I saw this on Twitter, when part of the Jets' success is their goaltender, Connor Hellebuck.
A big
part. Part might need to be defined a little bit there.
Let me start again. When a significant factor in the Jets' success is Connor Hellebuck between the goalposts, when you don't have him there, you are definitely a weaker team. And that's not an insult to David Riddick, but he's not the goalie that Connor Hellebuck is. I think everybody knows that, and David Riddick knows that himself. So, you're absolutely right that, it was a bit of a curious decision. There were a couple curious decisions. I didn't love that Axel Jonsson-Fjällby was not in the lineup last night. I didn't see any reason why he needed to be pulled out. And I thought, in fact, that the Jets sort of missed his energy. He's a guy who, Mikey Eyssimont and who I thought was one of the Jets' better players in terms of at least being noticeable early in that game. I think, Fjällby would have also been in a similar position last night. He would have at least provided some energy when the team was struggling to find some energy and the team was struggling to, have any connectivity between their passes. He would have gone in, at least forechecked a little bit. I thought that was a bit of a curious decision by Rick Bowness as well. I understand not wanting Sam Gagner to, sit in the press box for games on end, but I didn't see anything poor out of Jonsson-Fjällby that warranted him coming out of the lineup. Again,
he's been good. You're right. And there was just something off about the Jets, especially in the first period, guys. Mm-hmm. I agree. When Columbus went up 3-0 later in the second period, I remember there was a flurry. Kyle Connor, it seemed like, had 3 or 4 chances. Remember, Morgan Barron had two chances actually. Eunice Korpisalo made an incredible save. Everybody remembers that. So
Barron hit the post on the other one.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So the Jets could have easily had a couple of goals. Then you make it a 1-goal game. But obviously, Korpisalo, let's not kid ourselves. He's not a top NHL goalie, but he's been an NHL goalie for a long time now, and he played really well. So you can't take that away from him, right? He played well, and he wasn't the main reason why Columbus won. To me, Columbus goes up a couple goals in the first period, and the Jets didn't have a good response until too late in the game, right? We talked about it. It wasn't until the later stages of the second period, and the third period wasn't very impressive either. Right. So and again, I just think it was a little bit curious that Riddick got the start, even though it wasn't his fault. And some people in the chat might agree, maybe people disagree with me, but I just thought with how well Hellebuck was playing, who cares if you're playing Columbus? And who cares what Riddick's numbers are against Columbus? I just thought Hellebuck should have kept going when you have a goalie that's playing that well. So, yeah, you have to respond again on Sunday, and I think they will. I think, they're not going to be happy at all with the way they played. I think that's kind of top to bottom. I don't think there are many players. Pierre-Luc Dubois had a pretty good game, got the goal, got the Jets on the board, as Dave mentioned. But for the most part, this was a collective team failure in this game.
Yeah, by and large, there's nobody who's going to be happy with their performance in last night's game. I wanted to highlight this comment from Brian because I thought it made.
I already highlighted that comment from Brian.
Well, I wanted to bring it back up because I wanted to discuss it. So yeah, Brian's getting double the highlights for this morning's Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I agree with this. I just find Kyle Connor on the left side of the power play to be awkward. I don't think you're using him in the best position where he's at his most dangerous on the left side of the power play. I agree entirely with what he's saying. Much better shooting angle from the right side. And I get that you're trying to get Wheeler in off of the half wall when so that maybe he becomes a bit of a shooting threat. But anything
he's a real threat based on those shots last night.
I anything that's taking away the shooting, the Kyle Connor from his best shooting threat position is playing into the opposition's hands. I mean,
and we should mention, sorry, Drew, we should mention Connor is a left shot, right? So if anybody's confused there about why he's better on the right side versus the left side, it's just because to take passes, he can step into a shot. Basically, generally speaking, I mean, there's other things at play there, like, the way he takes pucks like rimmed around the boards and stuff like that. We're not going to get too technical here with the breakdown of each different power play look, but I think that there's something to be said for that, because Kyle Connor is your best shooting option. And remember what we saw a couple of games ago, I think, was it the Blake Wheeler goal, or was that against, it might have been last game against Colorado. Sorry guys, I'm obviously not getting enough sleep, I'm getting my games confused, but the power play goal was against Colorado that he scored.
It was the opening goal of the game.
Where Dubois, he was on the goal line, and then Dubois passed the puck to, I think it was Morrissey. Then Wheeler moved in off the point and shot it, right? Something that we haven't seen a lot from Wheeler. We're usually watching him pass the puck to somebody who's scoring on the power play. But I think, sometimes you have to simplify, but I think other times you have to just go back to what works for you. And I think, Connor needs to be hammering that puck more on the power play.
That's exactly it. I mean, if you're taking Kyle Connor out of his main scoring threat opportunity, where he's on his, when he's on the right side there, he's stepping into it, and he's somebody that all the opposition has to tee off on and has to be made aware of. But when he's on his left side, he's not on his strong side when it comes to the firing the one timer. When you think about where Laine was, back on the Jets power play, or where Ovechkin has always been on the power play, just getting ready there where they can tee him up with the pass and he can just fire it. Well, Connor's not in the position where he's able to do that right now, and I don't think that is a recipe for success for the Jets on the power play. And I know that look, Wheeler's lack of shot, and I know he scored on Tuesday against Colorado, or whatever day that game was, Monday. They're all blurring together. I know that, but his I guess it was Tuesday, because his lack of shot is just not. It is an advantage for the opposition, because he's not a shooting threat for the most part. He's a passing threat, and we know that. It's like playing basketball. If you have a guy who's on the court who's a great defender and a great passer, but he's not a great shooter, well, then you can play off of him in basketball. You don't have to worry about him that he's going to, shoot the lights out. Now, he might get a basket here or a basket there, because he's obviously still a pretty good basketball player, or he's going to get a goal here or a goal there.
Is this the illegal screen basketball show, Drew? What's going on here? I'm making
an analogy. He's obviously still at some point in time going to get a goal, if you play off of his shot. But for the most part, you're okay with that. That's a risk you're willing to take when you're 5-on-4. And I don't like Connor where he's been set up as of late. And I wonder if that changes back sooner rather than later.
And we all agree on that, Drew, but I think it comes down to, and I think you'd agree with this, the Jets have way too many guys that can set up plays and shoot, that they shouldn't be struggling this bad on the power play, right? Like, yes. Connor can set up plays, we've talked about that a lot, right? He can set up plays just as well as he can score. Same thing goes for a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois, Cole Perfetti. Like, I've really liked the way Cole Perfetti has looked, coming in, kind of circling back off the half wall and kind of moving into the slot area and shooting. Like, Perfetti, Connor, Scheifele, Dubois, Wheeler, Morrissey, PR. Like, the Jets have to figure this out, and I think they will. I just think that, they're trying to make too many nice plays, and, sometimes you have to just get the shot on net, get a rebound, go to the dirty areas, whatever, make plays down low. It's just the power play is just not working right now, and they have to figure this out, because even though they've got Anaheim coming up tomorrow and they're not a very good team, Florida's a pretty good team. You've got St. Louis on the road next week, and then we know how busy the schedule is in December, right? So I don't think the Jets are going to go on a downward spiral here. That's not what I'm saying. But the power play is a real thing right now. Like, it's a real problem for them.
It's an area of opportunity, Dave, is what it is. If they ever get the power play going, then that would certainly add another dangerous element to their game. I mean, look, these are, ultimately when you're talking about the Jets record, these are sort of smaller problems that we're trying to that are being discussed. It's not like they're struggling below 500 and nothing's working. They're still far above 500. They're still in a very good position. It's just fine tuning these small parts of their game. Dave, what I wanted to ask you, Ehlers is still obviously not going to be, he's going to be out of the lineup for this entire month at least. We know that. The revolving door on the right side next to Dubois and Connor. it seems like Scheifele, Wheeler, and Perfetti are now aligned, and they've been going pretty well. But it's that revolving door, with Connor and Dubois. Who's next up in your books to try and fill that role? We saw Morgan Barron
Patrick Kane
yesterday. Patrick Kane, thank you, Ezzy. We've seen more Sam Gagner. Nobody's jumping out at me. Who would you put up there as the next person to audition to see if they can work with Connor and Dubois?
Ezzy Ginsburg.
Okay, well, after that experiment fails, because I can declare it a fail already.
If they want a fat, washed-up guy on the right side, then I'm definitely the man.
No, I mean, clearly that's the big question right now with the Jets is how do you find someone who's going to fit into that mold and fit in with those guys? And I'm of the mindset that maybe you need someone who's going to be like actually Janssen-Fjällby because he's fast, because he can get in there and retrieve pucks. He's not a scoring threat. Whenever there seems to be some sort of scoring opportunity, he like much of the Jets defense shoots it way wide. He doesn't appear to be that threat, but he's good on puck retrieval. And so maybe you need someone who has the speed, who can go into the corners, who can force the defense to make a quick decision that Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois can take advantage of. Like, I just don't think that Sam Gagner has the pace to maintain playing with those two guys. And I think that that's what you need. You need someone with pace to be able to keep up and to, like I said, you need someone who's going to be the early forechecker, because Kyle Connor is not exactly a forechecker. Pierre-Luc Dubois, obviously, it can and does. And we saw it with the way he's, drawing. I think he's top 5 in the league right now for penalties drawn. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we know that he can get in and cause frustration, but I don't know. I just think that there's maybe a little bit of balance, because look, Janssen-Fjällby is not going to be, again, he's not going to be a scoring threat. But I just wonder if you're looking at the current roster, I'm not talking about someone from the outside, but if you're looking at the current roster, he's one guy I think that could be an option. But we should probably head to commercial break because we're going to have Sean on soon.
That's right. Let's head to our first commercial break of the morning. When we come back, Rennie himself, Sean Reynolds, is going to join us. We'll clear the air, make sure everything's all kosher in the house between Rennie and Kenny after last week's debate. Stay tuned with us. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and we're thrilled to welcome to the program the man they call Rennie. Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet joins us on the air. Sean, good morning. How are you, good friend?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. How are you?
We're doing fine and dandy. Thank you for waking up with us bright and early this morning. Inquiring minds demand to know, Sean.
Yeah.
Have you and Ken made up?
Oh yeah. We you know what, we like to, I don't know if you guys are like this, but we like to let it boil over on the show. It's almost like therapy, you know what I'm saying? Well, we walk around in passive aggressive nature with each other throughout most of our lives, and then we get to the show and we just go at it and let it boil over, and then we're very cordial with each other afterwards. So yeah, we're doing just fine.
I like it. Hockey therapy, Sean.
Exactly.
Well, that's what we wanted to hear. We want to hear that all is good in Kenny and Rennie world. Not great in the Jets world last night, Sean. Obviously a stinker on home ice against one of the weaker teams in the league, in the Columbus Blue Jackets, weaker, and at least in terms of the standings. From my perspective, the best players for the Blue Jackets were far better than the best players for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's almost as simple as that. You saw some of the sort of old bad habits that the Jets have been trying and more often than not succeeding in getting out of their game rear their ugly head last night in terms of the Blue Jackets. Full marks for their victory, of course.
Yeah, I think if you take a look at where the Jets have fallen short in the last number of years, it's the consistency part of things, right? And Rick Bowness, for the most part, clearly by their record, has addressed that. Early in the beginning of the year, the Jets, I was on record as saying the Jets were winning games they probably shouldn't have won. They were doing the old thing where they outskill the other team, even though they're, the inferior team throughout the majority of the game. It's a nice skill to have, but it doesn't mean a lot if you don't start figuring out your game. For me, for the most part, the Jets have figured out their game and have been a fairly consistent team. But, last night, and I think a little bit of that Minnesota game is a little bit of the Jets kind of falling into their old habits, the way I see it. That's the thing that every team is trying to get to consistency, right? They're going to have off nights. That's what an off night looks like for the Winnipeg Jets. That's what, especially with the top six last night, that's what the Jets look like when they're not buying into Rick Bowness's system. It was an interesting comment made by one of our viewers. Actually, I think it was Kenny's water bottle who was just sassing me on the show earlier on. But the idea of Rick Bowness's system, it's a taxing system, right? Like if you look at the way Axel Jonsson-Fjallby plays, who's been a very important player in that system, it's 100 miles an hour. You're running the engine in the red. And the question becomes, can you do that for 82 games a season? You probably can't. And so I think last night's is one of those nights where they're coming off of a high against knocking off the Stanley Cup champs by, shutting them out, 5-0 score. And then you come in and you go from one of the best in the league to one of the worst, and you're thinking you may not have as much. That's just a reminder for them that this is the NHL. Any team can beat you on any night if you don't show up with your best effort. The Jets definitely didn't have theirs.
Sean, I watched Rick Bowness's post-game presser this morning, and I believe you were the one who asked him about wanting the forward lines to look similar.
Yes,
right. That was your question, which was a very astute question, by the way. But earlier we were talking about the right side, and who's playing with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I'm sure you guys have talked about that on Kenny and Rennie. But Sam Gagner, he's had a great start to the season, and I think Gagner has been a great 1-year acquisition. So I'm not taking anything away from Gagner, but I think you'd agree that he's probably going to be much more effective in a third line role or a fourth line role as opposed to a first line or second line role, right? So how do you address that? We mentioned Axel Jonsson-Fjallby, who is kind of a bit of a divisive guy in terms of not providing a lot of offense, but he provides a lot of energy, kind of that crash and bang type of winger, right? Like, I don't know. It just seems like the makeup of these lines right now, I mean, the pairs are okay. Like, Scheifele, Perfetti, Wheeler. I mean, that line is working right now. But I guess, looking at the forward lines as a whole, what do you see? Because I feel like even though they're getting balanced scoring sometimes, it also feels like you have a few guys that are stuck in pretty big scoring slumps.
Well, what I see is, it's interesting because Kyle Connor this year, I think we've all got the feeling that we're waiting for Kyle Connor to launch, right? And yet Kyle Connor is near a point per game player. The Jets have 5 guys who are near point per game players. Now, I know the balance on other teams is because, none of the Jets are shooting the lights out the way like a Jason Robertson is, or, and I'm going to the very top of the league. But if you take a look and try and name other rosters around the league that have 5 guys at near a point per game pace, the Jets are doing a really good job of spreading this out. And I know that Ken and I have been having a debate, an ongoing running debate in our show. And I think it's happening. I don't know, I think you guys have talked about it. The fan base I know is talking about it, about, kind of going and trying to find someone for Nick Ehlers to fill in that spot. But to me, that's letting these skilled players of the Winnipeg Jets off the hook. Like, how many teams around the league have lines where it's like just 3 phenomenal guys who could like score 30 goals and put up 100 points? Like, that's not common. That's not normal. You shouldn't need 3 phenomenal players to make up a decent scoring line in the NHL. Sidney Crosby, for the vast majority of his career, has put up point per game seasons, sometimes with 2 guys on his wings who are fairly nobodies. The first year they win the Stanley Cup, he goes and is the number 1 line in the playoffs with 2 guys who'd been in college earlier that year, and Connor Sheary and Brian Rust. So you don't need to have 3 phenomenal players to make up a line. We're going to get, or the Jets are going to get Nick Ehlers back, and then they're going to have a stacked top 6, and that's going to be fine. But this is my take on this. If you can't get by and find either Axel Janssen-Fjallby or Sam Gagner or Jansen Harkins or something like that to go up and spell off a little bit of time to cover that top 6, what's wrong with your top 6 players that 2 phenomenal players can't get by with a very good NHLer on their wing, rather than going out and trying to find Patrick Kane to save the day? Like, to me, this is, and this has been my thing. I'm not saying that the Jets shouldn't. I think the Jets have to go deep sea, big game fishing this year, because I think based on the way all the
time to get a Marlin, Sean.
Exactly. Time to get one of those things that, you have to hang off the hook because you can't hold it yourself.
Muskie's more Manitoban. Right? I should have said Muskie.
There you go. But I think the Jets have to do that at this stage, because the way their contracts are going, expiring contracts, you never know what's happening in the future. Based on the window they've had, I think the Jets have to go all in this year the way they've never done it before. I just don't see the Mayday call that so many are seeing in the fan base, that something has to be done right now. Like, until they lost last night, and I know it doesn't look good to lose to the 30th place team. This team is in a very good position, and the weaknesses in this team, they've been doing a good job of next man up kind of handling it. I don't see the panic that everyone else seems to see. I see a bunch of players who are being given opportunity, for the most part, meeting those opportunities. And I think they just keep doing that until something goes. Like, I don't think you make a move until you're forced to. And if you can spell it off this way until Nick Ehlers comes back, you do that. And then you save your cap space to go into the trade deadline, and then really go and get that kind of piece that is going to be able to transform your team or heighten your team to a level of danger amongst the best teams in the NHL.
Saturday morning, Sean Reynolds, you know him as Rennie, is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Sean is, of course, with Sportsnet and hosts the Kenny and Rennie Show, following each and every Winnipeg Jets game, and following, of course, the Illegal Curve post-game show.
Yeah, call it what it is, Drew, the post-game show. But anyways, Shawnee, you talk about Nikolai Ehlers' return, and we know that's not happening for a while. But one player who might be close to a return is Logan Stanley. We know he shed the non-contact uniform and that he's been practicing with the team, and there's another practice today at 12 noon. So he's potential to return. When he does return, that of course means they're going to have to figure out some sort of move to make, because that'll give them 24 on the roster. So if you're the Winnipeg Jets right now, you've got Mikey Esimont and Jansen Harkins. They're still waiver exempt. They can be sent down. You've got other players who you have to make a decision on. If you're the Kevin Cheveldayoff, what are you doing in terms of a move to correspond with the Logan Stanley return from IR?
Well, so I think the way that they did this earlier in the season would suggest that it's a forward going down, or but I'm not sure that that's if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I don't think that's what I'm doing. I think because of the way Rick Bowness is using the forwards, the way that we just talked about, this kind of just rotating guys in and out, I think it's what they're going to need to spell that off. One of the things that Rick Bowness behind the scenes, I don't know that he's talked about it publicly, but I know that when we meet for our Hockey Night in Canada meetings, we've had conversations with him about this. The Jets have survived, in his estimation, the Nick Ehlers injury in a large part because of the light schedule, and that's behind them, right? They've got to grind now right through Christmas, and he had said that that injury is going to be exposed in a way that it hasn't been so far, and I think you spell off that injury by keeping fresh bodies up front to try and continue that rabid pace that they like to set defensively. So I think you need the forward more than you need the defenseman. I wouldn't be surprised to see them send Logan Stanley down on a conditioning stint at some point, just because they can do that without having to make a move and kind of delay that move as long as they possibly can. But when it comes down to it, I think Capobianco is going to go down. That would be my take on what to expect from the Winnipeg Jets, just because, Dylan Sandberg hasn't given much of a reason to come out of the lineup. And I don't know that Logan Stanley changes that. So you're basically getting into a situation where you're asking yourself, who do you want to expose in this situation? Or I think there may be potential that if Capobianco is number one on my list, I think Sam Gagner becomes the second person on my list if they do decide to go with a forward. I think what they're seeing from their players and the young guys is we're starting to see a change of how they're viewing Sam Gagner's time here, and know that Sam Gagner was always brought in to be a temporary solution, and that the rest of the players that they are auditioning in those forward roles are more of a long-term solution with the Winnipeg Jets. So if they're going to take a risk, it would be with Sam Gagner.
Sean, Tuesday night, not with apologies to the Anaheim Ducks skipping over that game, but Tuesday night sees the return of Paul Maurice, obviously now behind the bench of the Florida Panthers, and there's going to be a lot of ink spilled and words spoken about his time here in Winnipeg, and we're going to do that, of course, right now, and we're going to do it again at the top of the hour, talking about it from your perspective. If you had to sort of sum up the Paul Maurice era in a couple of sentences or in whatever sort of time frame you choose, how would you describe his time as the Winnipeg Jets head coach?
Okay, I think it's important because I think the one thing that Paul Maurice did extremely well, and it's debatable, like people can say, well, it would have happened anyways. I don't agree with that. If you take a look at what each individual player became under Paul Maurice, I think they became almost the best possible version of themselves for a certain amount of players, right? Blake Wheeler was not the Blake Wheeler we know before the effect of Paul Maurice came into his life. And Blake Wheeler was already an older player in his late 20s when Paul Maurice arrived. I think Blake Wheeler's career looks entirely different if he doesn't run into Paul Maurice. Mark Scheifele became everything you could have ever hoped for him becoming as a 7th overall player who is actually, like the Jets jumped up to take him. I know they saw potential in him. Paul Maurice got that potential out of him. A player like Kyle Connor, I think, became everything that you could hope Kyle Connor became. Patrick Laine walked in and out of the gate became a 30-goal, then 40-goal scorer. And now I think once those spots got filled on the team, then the argument starts about the next generation of players after that, and did he handle them properly? But I think when there was open auditions for really good players on that team, Paul Maurice took and turned all the Winnipeg Jets that we see right now, who are impact players with the Winnipeg Jets, into the best they could possibly be individually. Now, I think at some point, that individual nature of what he was able to elicit became the primary focus, and then the team focus at some point fell by the wayside. I believe that has been the problem with the Winnipeg Jets over the last number of years, and I think the evidence of that is year after year after year, you would see Winnipeg Jets personally having the best seasons of their career stat-wise, and yet the team's results went down and down and down. And so I think this Rick Bowness coming in is a correction that we're seeing happening right now, him putting that kind of a team first model in, and the success we're seeing from them, I think is a result from that. I think it should have happened a number of years ago, but Paul Maurice plays a very important role in the success of the Winnipeg Jets this year, because the danger that each of these players present individually in their skill development and what they became as NHLers is what drives this team. I just don't think he ever had the answer of how to put it all together into one delicious gumbo.
I do like some good delicious gumbo.
I think you made a lot of really good points there, Clark. And I think when the next question for me is going to have to be about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I think it ties in to Rick Bowness nicely, because Dubois scores a goal against his former team yesterday. He's up to 11 goals, so he's on a nice 30 to 40 goal pace this year. You mentioned he's one of those top players for the Jets who's at near a point a game pace. I forget if he's exactly point a game pace, but he's close to it if he isn't. And the question has to be about his future with the Jets and how Rick Bowness has changed that, because the Jets obviously have other players who next year is going to be their last year. Scheifele, Hellebuck, Wheeler, we know those guys, right? But Pierre-Luc Dubois, this is the last year of his current deal. He only signed a one-year deal, so that's not the best way to put it. But in your estimation, has anything changed with the way he's played? With clearly he's flourishing under Rick Bowness, and even though Dubois was excellent for the Jets last year, similar to Morrissey, he's obviously elevated his game to another level. Like, what is your take on Dubois? Is he out the door, or is there a chance that he is going to sign, whether it's a bridge deal, 2-4 years, or a long-term deal? Has anything changed? What is your take on Dubois' future with the Winnipeg Jets?
I don't think anything's changed. I think that what everyone thought was happening in the summertime, based on the comments made by his agent and the fact that he showed up to the Montreal draft and all those kind of things. I don't think anything's changed. He'll say that. I sat down for a one-on-one with him at the beginning of the year, and I asked him if he thought Winnipeg Jets fans should have hope that he has a future in the city. And he said, I think they should have a lot of hope, right? But players can say that, right? We've seen that before. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau's situation is a perfect example of this. I've got friends who live in Calgary who last year, I just looked at the situation and I was like, Johnny Gaudreau is gone, man. Like, this is over. And they're stuck in that kind of in-between, which is where the Jets, this looks like it's heading, getting stuck in that in-between where it's like, well, we're too good to move the guy. We got to take a run with him. Like, that's the future I see with Pierre-Luc Dubois, where, I mean, you're not going to trade him this year, right? Because the team's too good and they're going to the playoffs. And then you're just running it into next season. Do you do it next season? If you're having success, you can't really move a guy like that unless you're moving him for help right now. And who's going to go out and give you help right now for a guy that they may lose in a little bit of time? So listen, Pierre-Luc Dubois had said that to me, but players can say that because they can always say, well, I had every intention to do it and it didn't work out. It's a safe thing for a player to say. When he said that, I was a little bit surprised by it, because you're giving a fan base hope. But one thing that always stood out to me, guys, was after I talked with him and before we had released the interview, Kevin Cheveldayoff had his early season avail. And I'd said, in my interview with him, Pierre-Luc Dubois said fans should have a lot of hope that there's a long-term future here. And maybe I'm reading into it, but Kevin Cheveldayoff's response to that was not, yep, we're making strides and things are going. So for Pierre-Luc Dubois, if he ends up leaving, A, he's left the market, so he doesn't have to worry about what the market says. But B, he can always say, we tried, it just didn't work out. But if Kevin Cheveldayoff at this moment says, yep, fans should have a lot of hope, and he doesn't re-sign him, then everyone looks at Kevin Cheveldayoff and says, what happened, guy, right? So his kind of cold or cooler response to that tells me behind the scenes, the Jets aren't feeling as though Pierre-Luc Dubois is sticking around long-term. I don't think anything's changed. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois is a pro who's playing great hockey while he's here. I don't know that Rick Bowness and the success he's having right now changes anything, because there's points last season where Pierre-Luc Dubois is playing near a point per game pace. Pierre-Luc Dubois' problem is that he'll go to sleep offensively for stretches of the season, and we're only a quarter of the way through. There's plenty of time for him to get dozy. on the offensive side of the game here, right? So we'll see how that plays out. But the one thing I know, guys, is players don't. Very few players have the perspective to look at a team and say, wow, my situation is here is really, really good. And maybe I'm just going to forego everything else to stick around here. I can't believe that the Columbus Blue Jackets got Patrik Laine to do it. But Patrik Laine knew a tough situation in the Winnipeg dressing room that he tried to escape and then got someplace where he felt a little bit more comfortable and probably appreciated it. But Pierre-Luc Dubois can look around the league and think there's a lot of really good teams out there. There's a lot of money out there to be had. Is this the only place I can succeed? I doubt it.
And that was the other. Sorry, Sean, to cut you off, but
no
that was the other question. I agree with you, by the way. I don't necessarily know that the first 2 months of the regular season have changed anything. But what I was going to ask you is it a foregone conclusion that he goes to Montreal? Because I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of teams that are aware of what he can do. And especially this year, he's already got 11 goals. And you're right. I mean, he's probably not going to end up with 45 goals or whatever he's on pace for. But is there a chance that he goes to another team? Because I think all of that chatter with Montreal, kind of everyone was fixated on that. But I don't necessarily. And look, he could go to Montreal, Sean. But I just feel like why wouldn't he see what's out there? And obviously, he's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. So the Jets either have to trade him to a team that he wants to go to. But I just think it's a very interesting situation. And it's unfortunate because I actually think the Jets are a great situation for Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think they need him up the middle, especially with the uncertain future of Mark Scheifele, which obviously maybe we'll get into another time. But if Scheifele leaves in 2 years, then the Jets are in a real bad situation where they've lost their two number one centers.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion, and I'm not saying that I don't think he will, but I'm not saying there's not a possibility that he signs with the Jets. I'm not saying there's not a possibility he looks at the team like the Anaheim Ducks and says they're bad now, but maybe they improve next year. And then he's like, hey, well, look at that. They've got money to offer me, and I think they're an up-and-coming team, right? But I just think that where there's smoke, there's fire. We heard a lot about Montreal. Pierre-Luc Dubois has a lot of really good friends in Quebec. He heads back there in the summertime. Like, that is the place where he wants to be when he's not playing hockey and needs to be somewhere, doesn't need to be somewhere. That's where he is. And here's the other part about this, guys. The Montreal Canadiens don't need Pierre-Luc Dubois right now. They're not winning any Stanley Cups. They're probably not going to the playoffs. So they don't need to offer a lot to the Winnipeg Jets to get him right now. You know when they could probably really use Pierre-Luc Dubois? When his contract expires and he's a free agent and they don't have to give up assets to get him. And the thing about that Montreal team is they're looking pretty interesting, right? Like, all of a sudden they're young. All of a sudden they look like a fun team. They're playing well. They've got a franchise player in Nick Suzuki, who's a first line center who, they're talking about him potentially being, not only is he also around a point per game pace, but they're talking about him getting Selke consideration. So you've got that guy there who's playing that. You can come off as the second line center behind him and take a team that's starting to look bathed in skill in the Cole Caulfields and the Nick Suzuki's.
Kirby Dog can play wing and center. Yeah,
exactly. But if all of a sudden you bring in the wrecking ball and the raging bull that Pierre-Luc Dubois can be, that's an element that team could really use. So I hate to say this, guys, but if Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to be there, it's starting to look like a little bit of a match made in heaven in almost every single way. So I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion he ends up in Montreal, but boy, oh boy, that situation, it looks like a road that it could most definitely be heading towards that works for Pierre-Luc Dubois, for not only his family and his friends and his life and where he wants to be, but for that team. That fit doesn't always fit. The question is, can they free up enough money at that time to pull that off?
Tomorrow's headline today, Reynolds says Dubois to Montreal, foregone conclusion. Sean Reynolds is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We're live on our YouTube channel. We're live on all of our social media platforms. Reminder, the Illegal Curve post-game show tomorrow around 4:45 p.m. Central Time. And then, of course, Kenny and Rennie, they'll have their post-game show probably. I'm going to say, let's guess what
post-game show.
Post-game show. We'll say 5:30, 5:45 tomorrow, somewhere in and around that vicinity after you guys do all your post-game duties following the Jets and the Ducks.
Sean, we're not all about patting ourselves on the back, but there's certain people on this show who may or may not have said that Cole Perfetti could and would be able to sufficiently fill the place of Andrew Kopp and the points that he was producing. I thought that. I wasn't 100% certain, but if you look at it right now, quarter of the way through the season, Perfetti has 4 goals, 11 assists. Kopp has 2 goals, 11 assists. So, and obviously Andrew Kopp got off to a bit of a slow start dealing with some surgery during the offseason. But what have you thought about Cole Perfetti's performance so far throughout the quarter of the season in his first full season here with the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, first, Dave, don't dislocate your shoulder patting yourself on the back there. But I think he's, I went into the season and Cole Caulfield was Perfetti was my pick for the Calder Trophy winner this year. And one of the things that I look for when I'm like prognosticating that award is I look for a situation, right? As a guy in a really good situation. Sometimes you can have the best player out there who's going to have to go to a team and he's going to have to muck it out alone, right? Well, Cole Perfetti has, when Nick Ehlers comes back, like look at all the different iterations of a top 6 players he can play with. It's an embarrassment of wealth for him. So I think that, it's funny. I ran into him in public and was just chatting with him, and he and I have had conversations, and he knows that I picked him to win that award. And one of the stories that we talked about on Hockey Night in Canada with him was he's not shying away from wanting that award. Like he's gone out and said, "You're damn right, I want that hardware." Right? A guy like Kyle Connor doesn't like to talk about that kind of stuff. He's just going to handle his business, and he's going to do his day to day, and hopefully his day to day will get him to where he would like to go. Cole Perfetti's not afraid to say it out loud. I want that. So I like that moxie, but I also think it puts pressure on a player like that. I think to start this season, a lot of the Jets have been slow to get out of the gates, and I think he's been a byproduct of the players around him not firing out of the gates. Now you can see the potential for him to heat up. He's still right there in that scoring race with the secondary guys. Matty Beniers is walking away with that race right now, but I see him making a
shout out to former Wee King Logan Thompson, though, Sean.
Oh yes, no doubt. Well, there's another Manitoba kid, the defenseman from is he from the Paw? Anyways, he plays with the Wild. Who's
Kalen Addison? Yep.
Kalen Addison. There you go. Kalen Addison is doing well as well. So there's some great players involved in that. He's smack dab in the middle of the second tier, and I think the first tier is being owned by Matty Beniers. But I expect to see him push through that. Look, what we're seeing from him is a player who's just in his first NHL season, and he's doing pretty good out of the gates. I only see him getting better. His skill set, I like the idea of them putting him alongside Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele, because Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele have that kind of like sixth sense ability to their hockey where they see the game ways that other guys just don't see it. I think Cole Perfetti has that. So I think he's a better fit, as good as he was. And when I say that, he didn't blow anybody away, but he was serviceable alongside Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois last season when he was in. But I think Mark Scheifele is more the player that you want him learning from, because I think their games are more akin to each other. So this is a new coach trying to find out where a new kid carves out his spot in the NHL. So I think you have to be happy for his first quarter of the season. And I think you have to believe that it's only going to open up, that this is a little bit of a snowball rolling down the hill, and the potential for his game we're going to see is a lot different at the end of the year than it is at the beginning.
Last one for you, Sean, and then we'll let you get on with your Saturday. The power play, struggling for the Winnipeg Jets, not executing, I think, at the level that a lot of people would have hoped. You've seen Kyle Connor get moved to the left side. We talked about it earlier on the program that we didn't love the move just by nature of what it does for his one-timer and for teeing it up. Do you see that, changing back, or how do you see the power play sort of getting back to the level that a lot of people expected of it this year?
Well, they have to get it back to that. I mean, it's like having Patrick Laine on the other wing and not using him and deciding to put him on the other side, which actually they did happen. Kind of shift him to that last night, and it was grossly ineffective when they did it. Right now, I know sometimes people think they got to switch it up for the sake of switching it up. But when you've got a guy like Kyle Connor, Patrick Laine, but Kyle Connor, I think that you just have to find a way to open that up. Like, Alexander Ovechkin has been sitting in that one-timer spot for the entirety of his career since the early 2000s, and they find a way to make that work because it does work, right? Like, the problem isn't Kyle Connor not working in that spot. The problem is they haven't found a way to get him the puck for a one-timer enough. And I do think there's a little bit of like there's a lot of times this year that I saw Kyle Connor get the puck and, go to take the one-timer and then try and freeze the goalie and move the puck somewhere else. And to me, that's a shot he would have taken last year. So one, Kyle Connor's not hitting the holes the way that he did last year. That's part of the problem. But two, I just think you got to power it in. Like, I think it was the Blake Wheeler tying goal against Seattle that it's a Kyle Connor one-timer and the puck just hangs around and gets batted in. Well, that's what happened last night as well. I think it was Wheeler who takes the shot, but the havoc in front of the net is capitalized on by Pierre-Luc Dubois. They got to get that puck to the net off of a Kyle Connor shot. If it's not going purely in, at least it's getting into the front with the velocity that a goalie is not going to just be picking it. He can't handle it. It's going to hit him and it's going to drop. And then let your big boys go in front go to work. And then once you start having to worry about the big boys in front, it just opens up more space for that shot. I just think I would rather see them force feed that Kyle Connor one-timer more often and see if they just can't create some havoc in front of the net that they can capitalize on. And then what's going to happen is he's going to start hitting those spots. I think they got to get back to that, because what we've gone back to is the old power play with Blake Wheeler on the sidewall, handling everything. And that worked at its best when Dustin Byfuglien was on the top end of that power play, able to blow that puck past the goaltender. When he left, that power play was never the same. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen Dustin Byfuglien back on the ice in that spot. So I think they got to go back to the Kyle Connor.
And I want to throw one more thing out there, Sean, just to add. I agree with everything you say, and I imagine Dave and Drew and everybody watching as well. But I really
don't
like
speak for me, Ginsburg.
Well, that's true. But
I was thinking that, Drew. I was like,
yeah.
you to speak for me.
He's a clairvoyant.
Yeah, I barely speak for myself. Usually Naomi speaks for me, but I love it when the power play is going through Cole Perfetti. I really got to say, like, I love it when he's on the point or on the half wall. And that's something that I would like to see a little bit more of. I think they've given him that opportunity, but that's something too. Like, it comes down to, Sean, there's way too much skill on this Jets team to not at the very least have a top 10 power play, right?
Oh yeah,
agreed. And we've seen flashes, like, they've had their moments on the power play, but overall it just hasn't been good enough considering the talent they have out there. And that's with or without Nikolai Ehlers, because we all know that if Ehlers is out there, then it's a better power play. But I just wanted to say that I think Perfetti, because of his smarts, his skill, he's got a good shot. I just think, I think sometimes they need to use that more.
I like it. One of the issues I think with this team is they kind of fell in love with their ability to possess the puck on the power play. And it's an impressive looking thing, the way they move the puck around, and they really don't allow teams to pressure them and turn over the puck. But I think what's happened with that is the idea of holding on to the puck and it not going to the other end of the ice gets them in a situation where they're trying to get that wide open net shot, like one-time shot in, and it's that or nothing. We only want to score those goals that look like we entirely embarrass the other team, or we don't want to score anything. And I think what it is it's born out of a little bit of a fear of the puck going to the other end of the ice. So what I'm talking about with Kyle Connor is like just slamming the puck to the front of the net, letting your guys go to work. But I understand they haven't wanted to do that traditionally, because that gives a 50-50 chance that the defender is getting the puck and sending it down the ice. I just think there needs to be a little bit less fear of the puck getting down the ice and a little more confidence that you can get the puck in and set it up all over again. And I think that holds the Winnipeg Jets back on their power play. They're not taking potential scoring opportunities. They're passing them up because they're afraid it's not the perfect scoring opportunity, and it could result in a save and a rebound and the other team getting it, sending it down. I think they need to start thinking, it could result in a save and a rebound, but it could also result in Pierre-Luc Dubois crashing the net and putting it in like he did last night. I think they got to get more into that mindset.
Sean, quickly, just so you know, the last time Dustin Byfuglien was seen on the ice will be on the Lake Winnipeg, maybe Lake of the Woods. Yeah, that's about the only place you're going to be seeing Dustin Byfuglien.
Watch for watch for the helicopter dropping him down there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He'll be, and believe me, we were at the Winnipeg Ice Fishing Show a couple weeks back, and there's some nice palaces they have. So I suspect that's where we'll see Dustin Byfuglien if we're looking for him on the ice.
You bet. You bet. Guys.
Rennie, thank you, buddy. We'll let you get on with your Saturday. We'll see you again at the rink coming up this week. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. I can't believe I got out of here without talking about the Hellebuck mask-off goal, but I'll take it. I'm out.
Well, you said all was well. Like, we're not going to beak you about it. We had the discussion on our show. You had the discussion on your show. Your discussion sound like. I mean, I went back and watched it because we were getting so many comments. Just to quickly touch on that, Sean. Sean, and let's just say to everybody who wasn't paying attention, although we know we have a lot of similar audiences, so I suspect everyone who is in our chat is probably aware of what I'm about to say, but. Let's just say Sean and Ken took opposite sides of the Connor Hellebuck helmet off situation. It was heated. It was animated.
And people are comparing it to the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump debate of 2016. Like that's
I'm just trying to figure out
that's how big it's become. That big, Sean.
And I can see Sean imposing on Ken in the press box. Walking up to Kenny. By the way, I got to give Patrick Laine as another aside credit for his comment to Kenny about his hair. Yeah. That was very funny about, for those who don't know,
Drew doesn't look impressed. This is my take. Anytime you can get a ball joke in, you should do it. That's what you should do. And Patrick
I agree 100%, Sean.
I agree 100% as well. I know what I'm working with here, so by all means, I thought it was a great joke, and I applaud. Anytime you can get a gear in on Kenny, you go for it. No question about it. Yeah. I'm still laughing about his tan versus the head at the beginning of training camp. That still cracks me up to this day.
Laughing, Drew, you literally called Ken out on our show, and you brought in a fourth screen so you could show the conversation between
Drew
him
brought
and
up
Sean.
the telestrator.
Yeah, you were literally illustrating it on the screen, saying, "Look at this, don't look at that." It was.
That's good. That's good broadcasting right there. I would tune in and watch that every time.
Thank you, Sean. Have a great Saturday, buddy. We'll see you again soon.
See you guys.
There he goes, Sean Reynolds, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, always bringing the heat. Let's head to break. When we come back, we'll talk more about Paul Maurice's return on Tuesday. Michael Traikos scheduled to join us at the bottom of the hour. We'll have a Minuk Moose Minute before we wrap up this morning. Lots to come. It's Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back, Saturday morning. We're live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Reminder, tomorrow afternoon, right around 4:45 p.m. or thereabouts, the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Ducks. And then the month of December, gentlemen, as I emailed you guys all the show links so you can access the studio, it's an incredibly busy month. I think with the exception of the 3 days, where they get off around Christmas, I think they're off from the 24th, 25th, 26th, Christmas Eve to Boxing Day. It's basically every second night for the Winnipeg Jets and some back-to-backs in there as well. So it's an incredibly busy time upcoming from now all the way through the end of 2022. And after Sunday's game against the Ducks, with all due respect, we've seen the Ducks recently. We don't need to go deep into them again. We know they're Trevor Zegras and more of a one-man unit. John Gibson as well. They don't score a lot, but they give up a lot. Tuesday night is, to me, the exciting return of Paul Maurice to Winnipeg. And I asked Sean about his legacy and what he's going to remember, or how he's going to sum up sort of Paul Maurice's time here in Winnipeg. I ask you guys the same question, Dave. When you think of Paul Maurice as the Winnipeg Jets head coach, what is your sort of takeaway that you're going to be considering when he returns on Tuesday night?
I can't help but think about the Paul Maurice waving gift. That to me is probably my overarching, waving to the crowd.
That's definitely his legacy. His legacy is one.
Is that gif?
That one thing. I honestly, when I think of Paul Maurice, people still tweet at me occasionally. I'll still get that every once in a blue moon. But the waving gif, I think, is the overarching thought when I think of Paul Maurice. And look, he did a lot of good things here in Winnipeg, and he did some things that weren't so good here in Winnipeg. And I think probably the worst thing that he did, if we're talking about his legacies, I think he gave the room to the team, and I don't think he had enough of a handle on what was going on in the room. And I think it cost his team, because it cost them a guy like Patrick Laine, who no longer wanted to be here. It cost them a guy like Jack Roslovic, who no longer wanted to be here. I wouldn't say it cost him a Trouba in that situation, because he obviously wanted to leave for different reasons. But I think it's one of those situations where, there's no question about it. He had a positive impact on guys like Blake Wheeler. We saw Blake Wheeler rise to one of the top wingers in the NHL for a number of years during the time that Paul Maurice was here. We saw the best run in the history of NHL hockey here in Winnipeg with the team in 2018. So there's no question about it that he's done some good things. And he's got the Jets to their first playoff series, against the Anaheim Ducks, coincidentally, back in 2015. So the legacy of Paul Maurice is a complicated one, because there was a lot of positive, but then again, you look at the teams that he had here in Winnipeg, and that I think Ezzy could have that 2017-18 team coached them to the Stanley Cup, for God's sakes, because they really were an excellent team, and they were all coming together, and you had Connor Hellebuck doing what he was able to do. And I think a goaltender makes a good goaltender, makes a coach. And I think that Connor Hellebuck, being a Vezina goaltender year in and year out for a number of years now, has made, Paul Maurice's legacy a better one here because of what he was able to get out of Connor Hellebuck. So I think it's complicated. I think he's done a lot of good things here, and I think he was a good member of our community. I don't think there's any question about him embracing living here in Winnipeg and speaking highly. I think he was, he gave, after Claude Noel, who we all like. Claude Noel was a great sort of, communicator. He had the great lines. I still use, free pizzas. We still talk about there's no joy in Joyland, and there's a lot of Claude Noel isms that we still reference. But I think that Paul Maurice came in and he took over, and he created this aura. And he was good. He knew how to handle the media. You could watch him. I remember being in media availabilities, and I didn't go into a lot of them. I kind of thought it was a waste of time, but he was so skilled that he would direct questions. And, you'd start to say, Drew, you're starting to ask him something. And he could tell, he knew where the question was going to go. And so he'd cut you off, but not in a really rude and aggressive way, but enough that he could direct your question in the way he wanted it to go for 2 to 3 minutes. And then it would be someone else's question. So he was very skilled at dealing with the media. And he was very good at, like I said, handling certain responsibilities within the organization.
Yeah. And just picking up on what Dave said about the legacy being mixed, I agree. Like, first off ice, he's an excellent person with the media. He's very well liked in the community. Like, I know people have told me that, they got to know Paul Maurice and they still talk to him. So he was a very good member of the Winnipeg/Manitoba community. So that's the off ice stuff. And Dave's right. Like, he is a master. He could give a master class on how to deal with hockey media. But when you're talking about on ice, yes, I mean, he comes in and he immediately leads them to their first appearance in 2015, and then we know about the 2018 run to the West Final. But I mean, there are a lot of things that happened, in that dressing room and on the ice that were unexpected, right? Like, we just talked about Patrick Laine. Like, not many people thought when the Jets drafted him back in 2016, and we were there in Buffalo, Dave. Like, not many people thought 5 years later he would be traded, right? And that's what happened. And we saw guys like Jacob Trouba leave. We saw guys like Andrew Kopp leave. Andrew Kopp was traded after Maurice left. But I think everybody knew that Kopp was going to be traded.
I mean, the one
was the reason why they were traded. All I'm saying is, I mean, there was a culture, I think, that was created. And I think that culture kind of crumbled a little bit, starting in 2019, 2020. And Chevy stuck with Paul Maurice. And I would make the argument that Chevy stuck with Maurice too long. I think he probably should have been let go the previous season. So the 19-20 season is what I'm talking about here. Or sorry, 2020-21 season is what I'm talking about here. Sorry, the COVID years are a complete blur, I think, for most of us, right? But
that's fair. Yeah.
I think the point is that, Paul Maurice, he had reached his expiration in Winnipeg for a variety of reasons. And we don't have to talk about it. I mean, the Jets were terrible defensively last year. They were terribly inconsistent last year. His message was not getting through. Nobody expected him to leave the team at that point, but I think some people were expecting him to be fired. So I don't think anybody was surprised that Dave Lowry had to step in. And obviously Lowry, didn't do a very good job in terms of, record, but I think that at that point there wasn't much he could do. But there's no doubt that, Maurice is a good hockey coach. I mean, it's not a coincidence that, Florida picked him up. And you could say that, it's time for new blood in the NHL head coaching ranks. I get it. But obviously Bill Zito didn't think that. And Florida's results have been mixed. But I would argue, some of that has to do with the fact that Huberdeau and Weegar were traded for Matthew Tkachuk. I think that, it's clear that Calgary has won that trade just in terms of, the sum of the parts, right? So, yeah, I think Paul Maurice is always going to be well-liked, and I think he's going to get a nice ovation when he comes back to Winnipeg on Tuesday night. But there's no doubt that I think the word that I would use for the Jets the last 2 or 3 years is underachievers.
That's fair. I think that when they hired Paul Maurice, he was the right man at the right time for that job. He brought them NHL credibility. I mean, Claude Noel, was an AHL head coach, and it was pretty clear early on in his reign that was where his limit should have been. That was where, his coaching chops, were better suited for, was at the AHL level. But the team that he had around him, again, wasn't very good. The Jets were, rebuilding, retooling, refining themselves after coming back from Atlanta. We know that. So Noel was fine for that, that bridge period. When they hired Maurice, he brought the team and the organization NHL credibility because, you had an AHL head coach in Claude Noel. You had an AHL general manager who's grown into the job in Kevin Cheveldayoff. These are guys who didn't have what I would describe as, high level. I mean, he was the assistant GM in Chicago, admittedly, but they didn't have that sort of gravitas of a lot of NHL headman experience. Maurice gave them that. And he did a tremendous job for a few years. And it's not his fault that True North and Kevin Cheveldayoff showed probably too much loyalty. and to the detriment of the franchise and to the detriment of the team. You last year was an absolute abomination, and the fault for that falls on Paul Maurice partly. It falls on Kevin Cheveldayoff also to a significant degree. A coaching change should have happened before Paul Maurice had to pull the plug himself. I mean, I know that this organization, for better or worse, refuses to, thinks they're above firing a head coach. For the most part, because, Dave Lowry can interview for the job again. Well, I mean, that was bullshit from the day one when it left Kevin Cheveldayoff's lips and was insulting to everybody because everyone knew that Dave Lowry wasn't getting the job. You can fire a coach. It doesn't make you bad people. It's just what happens in professional sports. They should have done that with Maurice, or they should have amicably separated or consciously uncoupled or whatever euphemism you want to use. They should have done that before last year. And they
consciously uncoupled. Sounds like you're giving like a first year psychology course or something like that.
No, there were celebrities who said that they consciously uncoupled. I can't remember who the celebrities were. Rather than announcing their divorce, they said that they were consciously uncoupling. But I don't remember who it is.
I think it's time for IC to consciously uncouple.
I think we're going to consciously uncouple you, Drew, in a second.
In any event, that's my take on Paul Maurice's legacy. A mixed bag, detrimental to the development of that next generation of Jets players, I would suggest. I think that his loyalty to veterans and, and again, at this point of his career, a leopard doesn't change their spots. What you're getting as a head coach. It's a guy who relies on veterans, who doesn't like playing young players, doesn't like having his hand forced to play young players, doesn't play, his fourth line very significantly, rides his horses into the ground. There you go. Thank you, Rob Mahoney. I knew that somebody in the chat would know who consciously uncoupled.
Drew, read it out, because remember,
I'm a little bit concerned that Rob knows that much.
Rob said it was.
Drew, it's because he's in their fan club. What do you mean?
It was Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow who consciously uncoupled. Thank you, Rob, for
is Chris Martin the guy from Coldplay?
Coldplay.
Yes, yeah. Coldplay. And Gwyneth Paltrow's an actress, if you're not familiar, Ezzy.
No, I know who Gwyneth Paltrow was in. Or no, she was in Titanic, right?
No, that's Kate Winslet. Kidding. We talked about that last week, right, or in the post-game show. Or whenever
Gwyneth Paltrow was in There's Something About Mary.
No, that's Cameron Diaz, Ezzy. That was Cameron Diaz.
So what movies has she been in? I'm trying to remember. The Pianist?
What about The Penis?
No, The Pianist, I said.
Oh,
Drew,
The Pianist.
This is a family show, Drew.
I don't know that what she was in. Somebody else can give you their give you Gwyneth Paltrow's IMDb. The point is, that's my take on Paul Maurice's legacy. There's a lot of good. He gave a lot of credibility to the organization, but at the same time, there were failures that have to be that are linked to his time here. And to be frank, moving it to the Florida Panthers, because they're coming into town on Tuesday. This Florida Panthers team is significantly underachieving. They thought Matthew Tkachuk was going to be their ticket to, more extensive success. That they had the regular season success last year, and that happened with a lot of tumultuous, air around them. Remember, Joel Quenneville lost his job. Andrew Brunette stepped in, did a great job in the regular season. I thought he deserved to get the job full time. They chose to go with Paul Maurice. Well, look
where right Brunette went, Dave. Pardon me, Drew. Now he's with the Devils.
He's now with the Devils, who are certainly having a tremendous year. He's there next to Lindy Ruff and the New Jersey Devils. But the Panthers are 11-9-4 guys. They're under 500. That is not very good for a team that thought they were a Matthew Tkachuk acquisition away from being a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. They thought that Matthew Tkachuk is going to be the player that gets them over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Well, and they give up. They score a ton of goals. They've scored 83 goals this year, but they give up a ton of goals because you look at that defense. And you talked about it as no Mackenzie Weegar. Obviously, he went to Calgary. No Jonathan Huberdeau. He goes to Calgary. That defense after Aaron Ekblad.
Huberdeau's a forward, Drew.
Yeah, I know. What does that have to do with the defense?
I'm just talking about as a unit, as the five unit
that was
on the ice. Well, if you look at that defense, to me, and even the forward group,
the best is that we were both clearly being sarcastic. We know that Jonathan Huberdeau's a left winger, but
yes.
Even though you're a right winger, Drew, but just kidding. But no, you're right. I mean, the thing with Matthew Tkachuk is I love Matthew Tkachuk. I love Brady Tkachuk. I love any Tkachuk.
You see, by the way, speaking of Ezzy, speaking of Brady Tkachuk,
Did
you
you
see
see
his fight with Trouba yesterday?
I know Dave was going to jump in that.
Sorry, what? I didn't. You guys were
Well, Drew for some reason needed to jump in over me. But anyways, the point is that Trouba and Brady Tkachuk had a little captain's fight in the Rangers Senators game yesterday.
I love captain's fights.
It
Big
was
fan of the captain fights.
Let me tell you, it was a heavyweight tilt. It was a good fight at center ice. Tico Napoli's in the chat. I'm sure he loved that fight. There was it was a big boy tilt.
Yeah.
It was a heavyweight fight.
The Tkachuks might be like a little bit younger, but like they know how to fight. Like
they threw it. Actually, I got to give I give the edge to the former Jet, Jacob Trouba. I thought he threw some big rights. So yeah, Trouba was tough. It was a very good fight. If you like fights, that one went down. It's quite a tilt between Tkachuk and Trouba. But anyways, as I see this floor back to you.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I just think that you look back on that trade, and we'll be talking about this trade. Like that was a blockbuster, a summer blockbuster, guys. But I just think they gave up a lot to get Matthew Tkachuk. And Mackenzie Weegar is a fantastic defenseman. You remember a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe, a lot of Jets fans had Mackenzie Weegar circled as a possible defenseman that the Jets could acquire. But you know, sometimes when you make a trade like that significantly changes the makeup of your team, you know, it takes a while to get back on the right track. And last year, you guys remember, Florida was like basically like a top team from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Like it's not like they pulled a St. Louis where they had this crazy second half to pull them into the playoffs or anything like that. Like Florida won the President's. No, they didn't win the President's Trophy, but they were close to the President's Trophy last year in terms of points.
No, but they did win. They did win.
They did win the President's Trophy last year.
Yeah, they won the President's Trophy. So there you go. They had, what do they have, 110 points or something like that? So they're underachieving. There's no doubt, Drew, but you know, there's still a lot of talent on that team. They're going to be a big test for the Jets. And, you know, I look at that defense and you're right. Mackenzie Weegar would make it look better, but you've still got Aaron Ekblad there. I like Radko Gudas a lot. Brandon Montour is a guy they acquired a little while ago. Mark Stahl, even though Mark Stahl, you know, I think is better suited for a third pairing role as opposed to a top four role. I think, you know, he's still a pretty good NHL defenseman, but yeah, there's no doubt that so far through 20-21 games, Florida has been a disappointment.
Yeah. And again, so the Jets have to, you know, you would think that coming into the season, a game against Florida would be a very difficult matchup. It would be a game against the defending President's Trophy winning team. Well, they're not the same President's Trophy winning team. They have a different look to them. And so the Jets need to, you know, sort of take advantage of a team that is below them in the standings. If you look back, you know, obviously last night against Columbus, below the Jets are above Columbus. You have Sunday afternoon against the Ducks, the Jets are above the Ducks. You have, you know, Tuesday against the Panthers, the Jets are above the Panthers in the standings. These are opportunities for the Jets for the most part this year. They've been pretty good at taking advantage of, Dave. But, you know, obviously we know what happens when they're not firing on all cylinders last night. You know, the Jets certainly aren't good enough to win games that they don't when they put out an effort akin to what they did in last Columbus.
I thought we'd be going to break right now.
Well, I was asking you for your opinion on that, but I guess I'll go to instead. Okay. I'm back with Michael Traikos. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. Michael Traikos of Post Media is up next. He's their national hockey writer. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rollies and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of the hour, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave M sliding into the screen like our winners slide into our DMs here on this Saturday morning edition of the show. We're pleased to welcome back to the program from Post Media. He's the national hockey writer. He's a good friend of ours. Michael Traikos joins us on the program. Michael, good to see you, buddy. How are things?
Hey, good guys. How you guys doing today?
We're doing great, Michael. Long time no talk, but it's nice to see you back joining us this Saturday morning here on the program. Always good to be get back together with you.
Yeah, I love being on with this show, and great game last night. So we got something to chew on at least too. Good game by Laine. I'm sure all the Jets fans love seeing that, and a 2-goal performance by Dubois as well. One in his net and one in the other net. So.
Everybody who was involved in that trade, Michael, got in on the score sheet is what happened last night. Roslovic got an assist, Laine with 2, as you mentioned, Dubois with 2. Not a great performance by the Winnipeg Jets last night. But let's start with that. I mean, obviously you're the national hockey writer for Post Media, and coming into this year, I would think that you wouldn't have had the Jets sort of higher up in towards the upper echelon of teams in the league, but yet that's where we sit here on the 3rd day of December. The Winnipeg Jets are among the top 10 of the league. Is that just emblematic of how important coaching can be? Last year, we know the Jets struggled. A lot of the blame was on the coaching, be it Paul Maurice, be it Dave Lowry after. They bring in Rick Bowness this year. Are the Jets a case study in the importance of a coach and how they can impact a team's on-ice performance?
Yeah, that's a good question, Drew. And I wasn't in that room all last season, so I don't know the inner workings of what was going on. But from people I trust and people I know, I heard that dressing room was just a disaster. And I heard that the coaches had completely lost control of the room and that there were some people that just had to go. And what we saw in the summer was, Blake Wheeler get stripped of the captaincy, but he didn't go. And I thought that was a huge mistake. I was like, how can you have a guy stripped of the captaincy and we keep hearing that there's problems in the room? Well, trade the guy, get him out of there. Lo and behold, Wheeler's producing what? Was he at 21 points? Is he tied for second most points on the team? And those problems within the room, I'm not hearing about them right now. And the team's winning. You're getting a great performance out of Pierre Dubois, another guy that I think there's a ticking time. There's a clock as to how long this guy's going to be a Jet or if he's going to sign an extension. Right now, we just don't know. But it's what you just said, Drew. It all goes back to, I think, Rick Bowness and gaining control of a room that I think The coaches before him, whether it was Paul Maurice, whether it was Dave Lowry, had just completely lost control. And I kept hearing the inmates are running the asylum. I'm not hearing that anymore. So we'll see if this can last beyond 2 months. But, if you had told me that the Winnipeg Jets would be in a playoff spot in a really tough division, and, the Central's not the Atlantic, but you've got the defending Stanley Cup champions there. You've got a Dallas Stars team that is, again, another surprise. And the Jets are ahead of the Wild, who I thought, a lot of people thought was going to be one of those teams that was going to contend for a cup, and they're ahead of the Predators, who have taken a step back. So it's a great start for them. And like I said, I think it all starts with Rick Bowness and gaining control of a room that was really out of control.
Mike, the Predators' issues are too many water main breaks. I think that's what their problem is. They have to just get that plumbing right. I don't know what's going on down there in Nashville, but I think that's part of it, right? But we have to ask you about Mitchell Marner's point streak, because it is the talk of the hockey world, and I know some people are going to say, well, talk about it enough on TSN and Sportsnet and Post Media and everything like that. But I mean, what he is doing is incredible, and he has a chance to keep that point streak going tonight against Tampa Bay. Which, what better team do you want to keep that point streak going against? The two-time Stanley Cup champions, not defending, but we know they were there last year. But I wanted to ask you about the Leafs though as a whole, and Marner, and obviously this point streak isn't going to guarantee that the Leafs are going to win a first-round playoff series. But you look at the Leafs, and what's the most surprising to me is how good the goaltending's been and how well they're playing defensively. They've obviously won 5 games in a row, but both Samsonov and Murray have been fantastic, and the defense has held up, even though, as you know, they've had a ton of injuries. And I think everyone's expecting at some point the Leafs to make a significant move on the back end heading into the playoffs. But just how surprised have you been with specifically the Leafs and how well the goaltending and defensive has held up?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say no one calls him Mitchell Marner outside of Toronto. In Toronto, maybe that's a Winnipeg thing.
No, I just said that as a joke. His full name.
I was saying, like, who's Mitchell Marner? No, but yeah, Mitch Marner's off to a great start, and you mentioned it, Ezra. You lose a third of the defense, and not just a third of the defense, but your top 3 defenders in Morgan Rielly, TJ Brody, and Jake Muzzin. And with Muzzin, I don't think he's coming back. With Brody, he's going to be back, and same thing with Rielly. But until then, it's been the Mark Giordano show. And geez, if you thought this old horse was done and was going to be put up the pasture, Giordano is showing you that smarts carry a lot of weight in this league, and he's been able to kind of really solidify a defense that I thought was just bottom 3 in the league. Even when healthy, I thought this Leafs defense was going to be their kind of Achilles heel. So you're asking basically, is it going to continue? I don't know. They played Boston once. This is the first time against Tampa. I don't think they've even really played have they even played the Panthers yet? Like, it's such a weird schedule where I don't think the Leafs have had really a true measuring stick up until tonight's game against the Lightning. And so I don't know really. We've had Matt Murray healthy when Samsonov hasn't been healthy. We've had Samsonov healthy when Murray hasn't been healthy. Finally, they're both in there. I don't think the Leafs have really got the best out of Austin Matthews yet. They're not getting any scoring from their bottom 2 lines, really. So it's such a weird team in the sense that they're winning games, and yet you could just point to flaw after flaw after flaw in their lineup. The thing I'll say about the Leafs is losing their defense, or 3 defensemen early on, really forced this team to hunker down and be more defensively responsible than they have been in years. And I think it really took some significant losses into the goaltending as well. Like, if you look at the stats, I think Austin Matthews is up there for hits this year. More guys are blocking shots. They're protecting leads like we've never seen before, and they're still scoring a lot of goals. And I think that's really been their saving grace, is the fact that, when you've got a team with Nylander, Marner, Tavares, and Matthews, you're going to score your way out of trouble like no one else can. So, but I'll say this about them. In the last month, it hasn't been just about the offense. It's been really about playing a really defensively sound game. And I think that only comes because they were really forced into a corner.
Saturday morning, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on our YouTube channel tomorrow afternoon, 4:45 p.m. The Illegal Curve post-game show. For now, though, we're joined by Michael Traikos of Post Media, looking around the NHL at everything that's gone on through the first couple months of the season.
Well, we're going to head out west next, Michael, because I got to talk to you about Erik Karlsson and the rejuvenation that he seems to. I don't know if there's a fountain of youth out in San Jose, but whatever it is he's doing, I read your column that you wrote a couple of days ago in Post Media about the idea that his biggest asset has been staying healthy, of course. But I mean, it's just remarkable. And I don't think enough people are talking about the fact that Erik Karlsson is leading the defense and he looks like the player he was 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. And health has a huge thing to do with it, Dave. When you look at this guy's career, his best seasons obviously were in Ottawa, and coincidentally, those the seasons where he was playing full 82-game season. So since coming to San Jose, I was going through the injury report, and I mentioned in the story, I think a lot of people would be surprised at how many games this guy has missed for like every injury that you can name in the book, like whether it's forearm, broken thumb. I think he's had like something like 4 lower body injuries in the last 3 years. So it's really run a gamut, and finally he's healthy at a point where the Sharks are really irrelevant. And I think that's really the thing to kind of consider now is not that, what is Erik Karlsson doing for the Sharks is, well, what he's doing for the Sharks, can he do that for another team? And whether it's, I don't know if he's going to get traded to Tampa Bay, New York, Toronto, Edmonton. There's a lot of teams that need defensemen. Do they need a defenseman who's making, what is he? Is he 11.5 now? Highest defenseman in the league for another 4 years after this at his age with the injury history. That's going to be the question. And will the Sharks retain enough salary to make that trade possible? But he's going to have a lot of takers. It's going to be a gamble. I don't know if there's another player in the league where you look at as a trade option going, wow, this guy can help our team, but he could significantly hurt us for the next 4 years just because of what he carries on a cap hit.
Yeah, Michael, if somebody just sort of opened up the sports page today, they open up a Post Media newspaper and they look at the St. Louis Blues. Yeah, exactly. You look at the St. Louis Blues and they're sitting there, at a record of 11 wins and 12 losses, no overtime defeats. It's sort of middling. You take that, a layer deeper and you see this is a team that won 3 in a row. Lost 8 in a row, won 7 in a row, and I think have lost, since then, 4 of their last 5. In terms of the, what's the real St. Louis Blues? Are they the team that won 7 in a row, or are they the team that lost 8 in a row? It's just such a bizarre year from my perspective so far in St. Louis, a team that consistently has high standards since winning the couple years ago. But Jordan Binnington just seems more interested in laying body checks and getting into fights, skating to the bench than he does in actually playing, a rational style of goaltending.
Yeah, it's so weird, Drew. And, this is the St. Louis Blues. Like the year they won the Cup, didn't they have the worst record? Like
they did
January 1st, and then all of a sudden they had the best record up until the day the playoffs started. So it's just it's a roller coaster year, but it's a roller coaster team. And I don't know what to make of them. Even at their best, I still think that this is a team that I wouldn't put them ahead of like Colorado. I don't even think I'd put them ahead of Winnipeg right now in the Central. They're just such a weird team. That being said, they've got pieces there, whether it's Binnington looking hot or just kind of hot under the collar. Jordan Kyrou is really good. Same with Robert Thomas. But then they've got some really old veteran forwards like Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko. Yeah, I really don't know what to make of that Blues team, other than I would never count them out, because just when you think they're down and out and that they're going to be headed for the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, like you just said, they just run off with like another 8 wins. So yeah, this is in their DNA. At the end of the day, I think they probably do get a playoff spot just because there's so many pieces there and so many guys there were part of that winning atmosphere, and they just know how to close out, similar to like a Pittsburgh or a Washington. But man, don't ask me to handicap it any more than that.
Yeah, the Blues, I agree with you. The Blues are a complete enigma. I wouldn't be surprised if they're competitive all year long in the Central for a playoff spot, maybe even get in. But I'm with you. I feel like the Ryan O'Reilly's not. You mentioned O'Reilly; he's not having a very good start, and they have enough good offensive players there. Like, is Tarasenko going to stay? Or are they going to move him? Binnington has not been good, so I agree with you. It's really tough to analyze the Blues, but I wanted to ask you about two teams that nobody had in the standings that they're at now. I think you know where I'm going with this, Mike. The New Jersey Devils and the Seattle Kraken. And I think everybody knew that the Devils were going to be better this year, just based on how bad they were last year. And the same thing goes for the Kraken, right? Bringing in a guy like Andrei Burakovsky, who's been fantastic. But of those two teams, this is going to be the $1 million question. And I think I know where you're going to go here. But of those two teams, which team do you think will end up in a playoff spot? Because New Jersey is so far ahead of the rest of the pack that unless they go 300 or something like that, they should make it. But of those two teams, which team do you think is more real, the Devils or the Kraken?
It's a good question, actually. I think based on the start and how much they have in the bank right now in terms of wins, it'd be hard not to say that the Devils are going to be a playoff team. I want them, and I think it's been a long time coming. They've drafted so well, and it's been a matter of just waiting for all those guys to gel together. And it's not even that Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier are kind of leading the offense. It's that they have four lines. Like, they have arguably the best third line in hockey right now. If you look at the stats that their third line's performing at, I think it's Miles Woods on that line, McLeod's on that line. I can't remember the other guy's name. Is like Zetterlund or something like that.
Fabian Zetterlund.
Yeah, they're producing better, I think, than any third line in hockey. And it's the fact that Lindy Ruff can roll four lines, similar to what he was doing right after the lockout in Buffalo in the 05-06 season, where he had like the Pominville line, he had the Drury line, he had the Briere line, he had Kodaly, he had just like go down the lineup, he could just beat you in waves. I want to talk about Seattle because I think that's the surprise. And I was talking with Ron Francis for a story last night, and I mentioned to him, I said, "What did you expect this?" And he said, honestly, he goes, "This isn't that unexpected." He goes, "We added Burakovsky and Beniers. Those are our two top scorers right now. Beyond that, look at the health of this team. Like, I think Brandon Tanev was injured for a lot of the last season. They had some other injuries, and because of COVID, they weren't able to kind of gel like a typical expansion team was able to gel. Like, I remember talking about Vegas, really. Like, Vegas had that misfit mentality. They had the shooting in Vegas, which really pulled everyone in the community together. And you saw that team, they all kind of felt like one. Seattle didn't have that. They had a COVID year. They had a lot of guys in and out of the lineup, and they just weren't very good last year. Now they get Matty Beniers, and you look at the impact he's had on Jordan Everly and the rest of that lineup. Everyone's kind of played into their spots now. Yanni Gourde looks a lot better on that line that he's on. Brandon Tanev's healthy. And, this is the Seattle Kraken that I think that we should have saw last year. It's just 1 year delayed. But, I like both teams for the playoffs, to be honest. I don't think it's just going to be New Jersey. I think we're going to see a lot of surprises this year, we're already seeing it right now. But I think there's going to be, maybe 5 or 6 teams that end up in a playoff spot that weren't in the playoffs last year.
Michael Traikos from Post Media is our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms.
Well, Michael, we have to talk about Jason Robertson and the remarkable season he's having. 22 goals already, leading the NHL through this quarter of the way through the season. I think he's disproving the need for training camp. I think he's showing to NHL GMs, like, really, training camp? I don't really need that. I don't need I'm going to be fine, and maybe slow out of the gate for a minute. And now, obviously, like I said, but what can you say about him? I mean, he's going to smash 41 goals was remarkable last year. Jets fans saw him and what he was able to do against Winnipeg, but he looks like he's going to smash that. He could be, 50, 60 goal guy quite easily this year. So what are you seeing from Jason Robertson as he continues to kind of take the league by storm?
No, what I don't see, Dave, is I don't see a shot like Austin Matthews. I don't see a skating stride like Connor McDavid. I don't see a guy that just stands out when you're watching him on the ice and say, wow, that guy's going to score every time he's on the ice. And yet every time he's on the ice, Jason Robertson seems to score. He has a knack for just finding those really soft spots where a goaltender is and just knowing where to put the puck. I was talking to Jim Neal for the story I wrote last week, and he said no guy watches video of opposing goaltenders more than Jason Robertson does. And he thinks that he's just like the thinking man's scorer this year. And, you heard similar things about Mark Scheifele, that this guy's just a hockey geek, geeks out on watching video, knows everyone's tendencies, knows what stick they're using. Jason Robertson is cut from the same cloth in that regard. That this guy, like I said, he's not going to blow you. He might have the ugliest stride in the NHL, and yet, and a shot that's not going to really scare any goaltender. And yet, he knows where to put it. He knows where to be. And you watch the other night when he gets his hat trick. None of those goals were just like blasts or anything. They're all just kind of like a couple inches above the pad where the goaltender was positioned. He works for screens. And like I said, like he's scoring goals in a way that Austin Matthews didn't score last year, and yet he's scoring at a rate that Austin Matthews scored last year. I think right now he's on pace for 75. He's not going to get 75, but I think even if he scores a goal in every other game from now on till the end of the year, he's going to get 50. So it's a remarkable season for him.
Michael, last question for you, then we'll let you get on with your Saturday. It's sort of a short one, but you can expand on your answer. Do we appreciate the Boston Bruins enough?
We don't. We don't. That was another team that everyone said that they're going to be rebuilding this year. They're bringing back Krejci. He's old. They're bringing back Bergeron. He's old. Their defense isn't what they used to be. Start the year without McAvoy. Start the year without Brad Marchand, new coach. And yet here we are, Boston Bruins again, top of the standings. What are they? They haven't even lost at home yet.
That's right.
They've 13 got 3 losses. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think, twice already. They're for real. And, it starts with Bergeron, obviously. This guy just sets a standard for everyone in the lineup. Now that McAvoy's healthy, now that Marchand's healthy, this team looks unstoppable. You almost forget that they have Taylor Hall. You forget that they have Hampus Lindholm. You forget that they've got so many actual star players who are playing non-star roles. I like them a lot. Just wait till Jeremy Swayman finds his game. That's the other thing that we're forgetting, that this has really been Linus's all-mark season so far, and yet Jeremy Swayman's coming off a season where I think I had him in my top 5 for Calder voting last year. So they've got it all. I really like what the Boston Bruins are doing right now. And if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're going, geez, again. Leafs have, I think, the 3rd best record in the NHL, and they're still they can't win their division. So they're probably going to end up facing Tampa in the first round and losing again in 7 games. So, more things for me to write about, I guess.
That's right. It's more fodder for the columnists, and you can't go wrong with that. Michael Traikos is the national hockey writer for Post Media. He's a good friend of ours. Good to see you, Michael. We'll do it again real soon. Thanks for joining us this morning, buddy.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. There he goes, Michael Traikos, this Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Wrapping up, got a few minutes left before we say a good day to you all, and there's only one thing that we can do to fill that time. Dave
Put
M.
on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Dave M's time to shine involves him unmuting his mic. Unmute the mic is how that works.
Sorry,
Dave.
I was so excited that you cut yourself off to get into the Minuk Moose Minute that I was just overjoyed. I was like, wow.
I was a little quick with the trigger fingers.
I know that was somewhat unexpected. So that's why it caught me off guard, Drew. I was like, oh, I guess Drew's going to go a little bit early, but that's fine. I understand. It was an exciting day game. The first time in the history of the Jets Moose organization that they've ever had a day game here in Winnipeg. So that was exciting. We've talked about it oftentimes, and we watch those games for the Moose in Milwaukee or Rockford or Chicago. But here it was the Project 11 school day game, 6,000 plus young kids. We know Bailey was with her school watching the game, and it was awesome. It really was. Like I said, I love when kids are at games because they bring the excitement. Mark Morrison, the head coach of the Moose, talked about it after. I don't know what they're cheering about, but they were cheering throughout. And one point made by Daniel Fink, I was doing color with him during the game, and he said, I guess the advantage that kids have is that they're in music class, so they can play those music, the noisemakers in perfect unison.
More cowbell?
Perfect. No, it wasn't cowbell. It was little noisemakers. But what it allowed the kids to do was be in unison. So unlike the adults who are uncoordinated, the kids, they're in music class. They know how to do it. So again, it created, honestly, like just a phenomenal effort for the game. or atmosphere, I should say, for the game, because it started from before puck drop and it went all the way until the end. And the only thing that was unfortunate is because it went extra time, some of the kids actually had to leave because of the way the buses were working. So they were actually leaving while the game was going to overtime. I told Daniel, I, of course, would have protested and tried to stay, but regardless.
And is it true that some of the bus drivers were eating the kids' lunches outside?
They were trying to figure out what was going on with that. They never got to the bottom of it, but I think it was that damn Sasquatch, if I recall correctly. The game started without some players. Brad Lambert, Chaz Lucius, Leon Gavanke, Cole Meyer, and Tyrell Bauer were all not dressed for the Manitoba Moose on Thursday when they took on the Milwaukee Admirals. And the game kind of got off to a bad start, even though they opened up the scoring because again, talking about those officials, puck went off the official right to after the Moose had possession in their end, and it went to one of the Milwaukee guys after it hit the official, went into the back of the net, and really unfortunate because the Moose really had been dominating in the first period. But Alex Limoges, leading scorer, he got his 6th of the season with a late goal in the first period to tie it up. And you thought, okay, well, the Moose played really well in the first. And remember, Milwaukee comes into this game, they're the best team in the Central. They're ahead of, I think they'd won 6 or 7 in a row. So they were really feeling good about themselves. Moose had an okay 2-2-1 road trip. So they were okay, but, not feeling as good as Milwaukee. But they played a really good first period. And, I think they had outshot them 15-9. Well, that was all gone in the second period. The second period, Milwaukee, whatever was said in the intermission, they got the message. They came out 8-0 shot edge. Then it was like 11-1. But amazingly, no goals. Couldn't score. And then that was good for the Moose because Wyatt Bongiovanni, the college signee, he kind of an unusual play. You don't see it very often. Shot off the backboard, and then Yaroslav Askarov went the wrong way. And of course, the high first rounder for the Predators selected in net. He went the wrong way.
He was taken right after Perfetti.
That's right. That's right. Was he 11th overall or 12th?
Yeah, 11th.
Something like that. Yeah. So, and then Bongiovanni put the puck in. So now, of course, it's a 2-1. But just before that, before they even finished celebrating, tie game. And so you're thinking, okay, well, here you go. But the Moose got back. 3-2, Jeff Malott. He's feeling good. I think he's got 6 goals in his last 8 or 9 games. So he's been really good. If people are wondering who may get a recall if you need a forward, Jeff Malott right now, he's feeling it. He scores a goal to make it 3-2. Now the third period starts and a couple of opportunities, but the Admirals get back into it. They tie the game, force it to go to overtime. Overtime solves nothing. Couple of really phenomenal chances. The officiating was terrible. The penalty calls were atrocious. Again, that's why officiating seems to be on the brain for everyone right now. And ultimately went to Ezzy's least favorite thing, the skills competition. And once that happened, the Admirals ended up scoring and winning 2-0, I believe it was. So in the end, they win the game 4-3. And now we've got a rematch coming up at 2:00 this afternoon between the Admirals and the Moose. And it's a short homestand. It's only 2 games for Manitoba. So they head out on the road after today's game. And it's the Made in Manitoba game, which I'm sure Drew will touch on in a second. But and then they're going to head out on the road. And I believe they're back on the 17th for a lengthy homestand. Probably takes them right to New Year's. My guess is correct. I haven't looked at the schedule. Try and keep it right in the present, boys, and not in the future. And then quickly, just to get into the injury updates. So Brad Lambert and Leon Gavanke were day-to-day, according to head coach Mark Morrison. He expects Leon for sure to be in the game this afternoon, potentially Brad Lambert as well, the Jets 2022 first rounder. Not so good news about Chaz Lucius or Cole Meyer. Both those guys are weeks, he said. So the Jets 2021 first rounder sustained an injury, and he's obviously going to be out a little bit of time. And the Moose alternate captain, Cole Meyer, who's been a big part of their PK, he's also out. And Tyrell Bauer, I know T. Conapauli's still here, I think. Other T. Conapauli. Tyrell Bauer was a healthy scratch, but I suspect he is dressing. I'll look that up while Drew talks about the Made in Manitoba Day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be at today's game representing my company, so you can come check me out on the concourse. I think I'll be.
And you're going to be in a dunk tank, right, Drew?
No, not a dunk tank. Unfortunately.
But Drew, just remember that the illegal curve zone is 125. 4
That's
tickets
right.
in 125 row 9. So go say hello to the fine folks that I've given tickets to, Drew. And if Drew doesn't come say hello to you, he'll be in 124. So you can go say hello to him.
That's right. I'll be in 124, I believe, either row 4 or row 5 today. And then, of course, I'll be in the concourse as well, representing my company. So you can check me out there during before the game and during the intermissions and everything else. Come say hi. I will look very similar to how I currently look. I'll probably wear glasses. Maybe I'll go with the contacts. Time will tell as to how I decide to change up my look. But if you're at the Moose game today, come by, say hello. Want to meet you in person. Always want to meet the great people who populate this fine chat and watch this show, download the podcast, and everything along those lines. So come say hi to myself. I'll be at the Moose game later on this afternoon. Dave M will be there as well, up in the press box, though, doing his thing, covering the Moose for illegalcurve.com. Ezra, to wrap up today's show, please go ahead.
Yeah, some pretty big news. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to announce it. No, it's not that I'm going to be a father again.
Thank God.
Today, my kids are going to see their first movie in theaters. We are going, so I'm not going to be at the Moose game, unfortunately. It should be an excellent game. But yes. I will be at Lyle Crocodile this afternoon.
Well, congratulations to you and your children, and I hope you enjoy Lyle Crocodile, and hopefully your kids can explain some of the plot points to you if it gets a little bit confusing. But I insist that you have at least the mega-sized box of popcorn in order to get through Lyle Crocodile. It is a great experience seeing a movie with your kids for the first time. My son and daughter and I and my wife, we went to see a movie like a few weeks ago. My son had seen movies before, but I think this is the first time he'd sort of really been able to get into it, and the joy on his face and the thrill that he got from the entire experience was definitely well worth it. So I
just really want to spend $27 on popcorn. That's really what I want to do. So that's what I'm the most looking forward to. It's going to be a nice and cheap afternoon. But yeah, I'll be happy if Ruben doesn't pull out one of the seats or something like that. So it should be fun. I don't know what Lyle Crocodile is even about.
I'm sure crocodile named Lyle.
I was going to say, I'm sure there's a crocodile involved, and there's going to be some celebrity voiceovers and everything like that. But for those watching right now, just basically pray for me that we get through at least half of the movie, because I'm sure Ruben's going to have to go to the bathroom a bunch of times. I'm not worried about Ariella; she'll be fine. But Ruben is going to be a bit of a menace, I think, to that movie theater, but hopefully it goes okay.
Well, there you go. Enjoy that experience. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon, 4:45 p.m. with the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Ducks. IllegalCurve.com has got all your latest Winnipeg Jets news. The Jets practicing in 1 hour's time, so any news that comes out of that, you can check it out, of course, on IllegalCurve.com, along with the Manitoba Moose game recap. That'll be there later on today. We want to say a big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the Saturday show, the post-game show, and the website a possibility. Frosty Winnipeg, get ready. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway. They're the official sponsor of the post-game show. Our friends at Tough Duck, Boston Pizza. There you go, Frosty Winnipeg. It's up on the screen now. Seagram's, Rollies Transfer, Grid Park, and The Keg. Support the... I see that you added Goop there, Frosty Winnipeg. That, of course, being Gwyneth Paltrow's company. So that's very clever. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us some feedback, both on the YouTube channel in the comments, on the podcast, on the iTunes. Leave us some feedback there, on Spotify, wherever you get the podcast. Leave us some feedback there. Tell your friends, tell your family the best place to be each and every Saturday morning and after each and every Winnipeg Jets game is the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Big thanks to all of you for joining us. Big thanks to Sean Reynolds. Big thanks to Michael Traikos. If you missed any of it, the replay is immediate. It's all, the podcast will be available soon. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.